Bethesda is complete trash, arguably even worse than Britain.
Recently, Arcane founder Rafael Colantonio, who was with the studio from 1999 to around 2017, discussed his decision to leave Bethesda Softworks following the launch of Prey in 2017, perhaps one of the most underrated experiences of the last console generation. All I can tell you is that part of the reason why
Prey is gonna be considered Bethesda's last true game.
I left Bethesda was that they did not want to do the kind of games that we wanted to make. He likened their approach to studios like Larian and From Software. Those are people who have been doing over and over the thing that they know exactly how to do until it hits super hard. So to me, that's what Arcane had to do. Colantonio wanted to keep building on what Arcane has been known for, with games like Dishonored and Prey, but due to the disappointing sales, Bethesda's management, the executives in charge, decided that was not.
Dishonored, by the way, I'll just remind everyone about Dishonored. Dishonored was amazing. The first part, after it turned really, really bad and gay really, really, really fast.
Part of the strategy anymore. Bethesda at the time wanted more live service games, thus why we got Wolfenstein Young Blood, why we got Fallout 76, and ultimately why we got Redfall, a game that truly destroyed Arcane in many different ways. Former studio director and longtime lead developer at id Software, Tim Willits, has been.
By the way, it was confirmed by Bethesda themselves that while Redfall technically is not a Bethesda game, Bethesda had full oversight over literally every decision that was made on Redfall, which is hilarious.
Been serving as chief creative officer at Saber Interactive since 2019. And recently, Tim Willits made some very eye-opening remarks in regards to Bethesda and their monetization, as well as the AAA games industry and how many projects are overscoping. And today I want to discuss and break down a lot of this because Space Marine 2, Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers 2, Palworld, these are all kind of smaller experiences that kind of came out of the middle of nowhere and really took over the AAA games industry in 2024. They took a lot of attention, and I really do think that they proved that this industry can be a lot more than just Call of Duty, God of War, and Fortnite. A reputation, or seemingly actually a fight that Bethesda themselves was taking on about a decade or so ago, creating smaller but grand single-player adventures that we weren't really getting from the rest of this industry. But getting a little bit more specific, Tim Willits made this remark in the pre-release coverage of Space Marine 2, in which he talked about the monetization, but it has resurfaced thanks to this article coming from Fandom Wire, in which he talked about, I worked at Bethesda, even the Emperor would bow down to the way Space Marine 2 boss trolled Todd Howard. So what does this article mean? Well, it's
Trolled Todd Howard? Dude, Todd Howard is 5'3". His life is meaningless. There's no point in trolling the guy, okay? It's Jesus.
specifically referencing this article that came from Rock Paper Shotgun in the lead up to Space Marine 2, in which Tim Willits was asked about monetization, and he said there are shifts and trends in the industry. He said when asked about the game's approach to microtransactions, people don't want to be sold horse armor anymore. I can say that because I worked at Bethesda. Our fans never thought,
this one, yeah, I remember this.
We ripped them off in World War Z. Focus are great. They kind of let us do what we want. And yeah, this is coming from somebody who worked alongside Todd Howard. And for what it's worth, Todd Howard, in regards to horse armor, and you remember that was a big debacle years ago. I believe it was Oblivion, in which they released that. It was like $2.50, and it made a ton of money. And it really has brought on.
He's so short, he sits on the floor.
The microtransaction hellscape that we now live in. Todd Howard was asked about this in 2019, in which he just said, well, people will buy anything. That was the example with horse armor, and everybody loved it, which is not my takeaway. I think it really has brought on this.
That's not even true. People actually hated horse armor.
Onslaught of pay-to-win nonsense that this industry has become so in love with. It's also every single big game is nickel and diming consumers nowadays, and it's kind of frustrating. And it's also the mobile industry.
Oh, this is the mobile Skyrim thing. Oh, this one's horrible. This one is especially bad. But then again, everything Bethesda has involving the Elder Scrolls series in the modern age is bad. And again, friendly reminder, the Elder Scrolls 6 is probably going to be one of the worst games, if not the worst game in the last, 5 decades. Okay, at this point, it's going to be truly uniquely bad. Because I mean, the same people that brought you Starfield are now working hard creating the Elder Scrolls 6, which probably is pronouns, all of that that stuff. Considering what's currently happening in the realm of the Elder Scrolls Online, with all of that gay bonanza, with all the gods being trans, gay, and whatnot, and every farmer having a gay lover. It's gonna be great, boys. Don't worry, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be the best.
They took the lessons that Todd Howard implemented all those years ago, and that is what mobile gaming is today, a microtransaction hellscape. But getting a little bit more specific with 2019 Todd Howard's remarks in regards to the horse armor, he said at the time, horse armor is not bad. I think horse armor is fine. The price point at the time was the issue. We felt it's probably worth this. Adding that someone we wouldn't name at Microsoft said at the time, well, that's less than we sell a Xbox 360 wallpaper theme for. A wallpaper is more than that. You should charge this. You can always lower it. We were like, okay, it's a price to value proposition. At the time, not do I want armor for my horse, and looking back now, it's quite cheap, which, yeah, looking back now, but nowadays we also have, well, World of Warcraft's
I was gonna mention World of Warcraft. Well, not World of Warcraft. I was gonna mention Blizzard Diablo 4. Hey, people are buying $80 horses in a completely dead game, okay? And 99.999% of people who are playing Diablo 4 are not Elon Musk, and they probably can't really afford to spend $80 on a goddamn horse.
$90 amount is so popular, the in-game auction house is selling out of WoW tokens, which, again, this is just one example of it, but, Diablo's also had their incidents of selling $70 mounts. Overwatch 2 notoriously has had some terrible monetization, and
I mean, that's all in the Blizzard spirit, if you honestly ask me. Blizzard is a sad shell of what once was. There just needs to be a game that overthrows any. It is better than World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and whatever. And all those people are going to leave. Because the reason why Blizzard can get away with this bullshit of selling $90 store mounts is because if you're playing retail, you don't really care about World of Warcraft. And that is a 100% fact for anyone who's playing retail currently. You're playing it either because you're absolutely bored and you have nothing else to do, or you're a blatant retard. Okay? So you don't really care about mounts or any of that type of stuff. You're just there to, gobble up a little bit of that slop because you're bored. That's it. No one is playing retail who actually cares about World of Warcraft as a game no longer.
Find that kind of funny, especially when you consider the fact that Overwatch 1 had a lot of controversy with its loot box system, and what replaced it was much, much worse. But then there's Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, in which every single release they nickel and dime with all kinds of cosmetics and different items.
Yeah, and the funny part is Ubisoft's gonna die very soon. Again, they have Skull and Bones, great stuff. The Star Wars Outlaws that they, by the way, still need to make one DLC for more, because for more is that sentence. Don't know, don't care, you get the point. And Assassin's Creed Shadows is probably gonna sell even less. Okay, listen. After, Starfield was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. Dragon Age Railgun probably just opened the eyes for the rest of the people who did not understand things, did not understand what's happening and whatnot, okay? Judge a book always by its cover, it will never lie, is the modern mantra of modern society. You can't avoid it, and it's gonna be right, and when it's wrong, it honestly doesn't even matter, okay? The game is literally as good as the trailers are. And if the trailers are boring, congratulations, you know what's gonna be. We already, by the way, after these complete disasters, we Indiana Jones and the gay circle. Okay, listen. That thing has 1/10 of the pre-orders currently that Whale got. Bethesda is so dead. Okay? Microsoft is probably crying to sleep every night thinking that they actually spent $8 billion on a crap show like Bethesda. Literally, 1/10 of the pre-orders of Veilguard. Veilguard did not even get 1/5 of the player base that it needs to actually make up. To go even, okay? Not even talking about a profit, but just go even. Not being in the red. And Indiana Jones is not even averaging 1/10 of the pre-orders that Veilguard has, okay? It's over. It's over.
Along with XP boosters and all that, pay for convenience, that's what they've called it, even Bethesda. Assassin's Creed fans hit out at Valhalla's extremely overpriced microtransactions. This is not okay, especially not for a game that costs 60 goddamn bucks. And that's my sentiment with a lot of this, but these publishers don't care. One of the excuses that we heard early on for why $70 games were going to be becoming a thing was,
why would they care? I mean, you work at the games industry. Yeah, sure, your company is gonna go down in flames because you're a retard. And a woke lunatic. Guess what? Some other company is gonna hire you right there on the spot because you have pronouns in your bio. You're literally losing nothing.
maybe we'll have less microtransactions, since they're upping these prices. That's not what has happened. These publishers just found an excuse to increase prices. That's going to be the same thing we hear when games eventually.
Also, you know what's my opinion about the price increase thing? I think it's showing with Avowed. Now admittedly, Avowed has pronouns and all of that stuff, so it's gonna be woke as hell. And I have seen the dialogues, I have seen the brain dead zero try type of things that they are doing currently with Avowed. No, Avowed costs $70. It's not even a AAA company. It's Obsidian. An Obsidian that has nothing to do, no longer do with Fallout New Vegas, and they're charging $70. We're gonna slowly at this rate move to a point where people are not gonna be willing even to dish out $30 for a goddamn AAA game because the risks are too high and the reward is not plentiful enough.
They make it to $80. But then we also have League of Legends $200 chromas and exploration. It won't change. The League of Legends Dark Cosmic Erasure Jin Mythic chroma is causing controversy for its high price point, but the game producer says it won't be changing.
Yeah, they did a boycott on this, which literally amounted to nothing. If you're playing League of Legends or Dota, you're addicted. You're just gonna buy this anyway.
Oh, that's nice. And then we have Call of Duty, which sold like an $80 King Kong glove. There was no difference. It was just, a pure cosmetic skin, no special effect or anything, but $80 fucking dollars. Really is crazy how this industry has changed. But there's also the fact that you have the Creation Club. That's something that Bethesda has gone hard in. You can look at Starfield. And I do love how Bethesda these days is blurring those lines of paid mods in which they sell their own. And the pricing also makes no sense. There's been controversy. They're nickel and diming at every single opportunity, and it really makes me frustrated because we know that this is going to be the case with the Elder Scrolls 6. Bethesda's going to sell what should be DLC content as paid mods. And again, it's not just like little things. They're selling quests, they're selling weapons, they're selling all kinds of different things, outpost items. They're nickel and diming at every single opportunity. That's the case in Fallout 4 with their own creations. That's the case with Starfield with its creations and the controversy that we talked over the summer about that. And then there's even Skyrim, which has had...
Yeah. By the way, it's funny. Bethesda just removed the Creation Club from Skyrim. Not because of your outcry. Bethesda couldn't give less of a crap about what we honestly think. The only problem was that they thought they're gonna get in legal hot water because stuff is just being resold, stolen, and whatnot on the creator labs or whatever you want to call it. Now Bethesda implemented it, and they're like, well, same old problems are still happening, but we're gonna keep it up because honestly, who cares? It was always about the money, not about anything else.
Had some even more controversy in regards to some of the content that Bethesda is seemingly just allowing on there. An example of that would be this. It's the Forgotten Armory Collection, a bunch of 90 new craftable and lootable items across 6 different tiers to the game, costs 500 credits, which is, you'd say that it's probably a good deal, except for the fact that these items all come from a medieval... Well, it's this medieval collections weapons variety pack. It's just an asset flip. Nice to see that Bethesda has some quality control. They don't. But yeah, somebody bought this for $50. They
do. They probably know, but they don't care. There's a huge difference.
Did it over to Nexus Mods, in which I don't think it was downloaded that much, and then they ported it over to Skyrim's Creation Club, and players and individuals have no idea of knowing that this is just an asset flip, and poor at that. I don't believe there's even a comment section or anything you can give with this. All you can give it is a thumbs up, and this just points to the problem with Bethesda and how they've
There's a reason they don't allow a thumbs down.
handled the Creation Club and their monetization overall. They tried making paid mods work in 2015. There was tons of controversy with it. They waited a couple of years and then they did it again, and they're going to do it again with the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 and all of their future upcoming games. And even their online live service Fallout 76 has had its run-ins with controversy in regards to them selling everything and anything, as well as some pay to
Yeah, that's hilarious. The Fallout 76 story is effectively like this. Why are you mad about the shop? We're only selling skins and whatnot in the shop. We're not gonna sell power. And if I'm not mistaken, literally a day after that sentence, they started selling power in the shop. Which was hilarious. And then they just kept adding things, pay-to-win elements to the shop, because who cares? I mean, if you're playing Fallout 76, you're either the most bored person on Earth, or you're the most slop fiesta person that ever existed.
win items in between that. But as I said at the beginning, Tim Willett's remarks in regards to Bethesda and the AAA games industry goes much further, because in a recent interview with IGN, he talked about why big budget games are failing in part because teams are overscoping their projects. Great games will always do well. Although, I think we do have an example that with Prince of Persia, that's not always the case. And there's been a couple of other examples. We opened this...
Dude, the Prince of Persia thing is hilarious. I don't remember if this was Legendary Kills video that we watched about Prince of Persia, but the 2D Prince of Persian game, someone was talking about how it wasn't worth the cost and how it lost money and how it only made like 15 million in profits. And I was like, 15 million in profits? Well, not profits. It's just sold for 15 million. That's how many copies it sold. That's not that bad to revitalize a franchise. And I'm thinking in my head, it's a 2D platformer, okay? It probably cost, what, 40, 50 million to make? And then I googled and my jaw just dropped to the floor because turns out a 2D platform costs, platformer Prince of Persia game costs 200 million to make.
That's not always the case, and there's been a couple of other examples. We opened this video mentioning the game, but 2017's Prey is probably the greatest example of an underrated classic that just did not sell at all. Some of that, though, does have to do with how Bethesda really did a terrible job marketing that game. Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks under the Microsoft umbrella, also a great game that ultimately ended up having the studio being shut down because it didn't meet these sky-high sales expectations that obviously Microsoft executives had for it. Yes, even these smaller experiences need to make millions.
This is a misconception. I hate the fucking Hi-Fi Rush discussion. The reason Hi-Fi Rush got canned has nothing to do with sales. It sold well. EA admitted it. Microsoft admitted it. Your mom's boyfriend's cousin admitted it. Okay? Everyone knows it sold good. But the point of Hi-Fi Rush was for Xbox to get into the Japanese market. And it sold horribly in Japan. Obviously, because there's no big biddies. But yeah, and that's why they can it. It doesn't matter if you actually sell good, you actually, sell over expectations. If your explicit reason to exist is to carve out at least some footing in the Asian marketplace, and you failed at that, I mean, shit, I don't know what to tell you.
Millions upon millions of dollars to warrant the time and resources that these development studios are working on it. Now, Willett's remarks...
And there's, by the way, a lot of other reasons. For example, you make Hi-Fi Rush, okay, that's good, but it didn't garner enough an audience to warrant the sequel, even if it did overperform. The risks are still too high, and again, it just, trust me, it just doesn't make sense.
specifically come about because of what Epic Games boss Tim Sweeney recently said about the AAA games industry. And he said that the games industry is going through what he calls a generational change that had led to some games failing to sell as well as their publishers had hoped. One of the manifestations of that change we're seeing right now is that a lot of games are released with high budgets and they're not selling nearly as well as expected, whereas other games are going incredibly strong. What we're seeing is a real trend where players are gravitating towards the really big games where they can play with more of their friends, and that's just not true at all. This is an argument pretty much saying that single player games are dying and people aren't interested in that. As this IGN article rightfully points out, games like Elden Ring, Game Science's Black Myth Wukong, then you can look to the other examples from the Star Wars Jedi games from EA, the Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica, Rockstar single player experiences. Those still rule supreme, and they still make millions upon millions of dollars in sales. The interest is definitely in there, and I think that what Sweeney is pretty much arguing is that, the safe thing is these big service games, and that's just not the case. There's only so much, interest that can go into a lot of these multiplayer live services.
That is the case because these companies don't want graph go like this. They just want it to slowly tick a little bit higher. So there is a financial reason why they are doing this. It actually has justification, and sadly, the justification for the people working there is perfect. Because they're not interested in hits, they're not interested in satisfying gamers, they're interested in getting their yearly bonuses.
Especially since a lot of players already have their specific multiplayer live service that they want to play, whether that be GTA Online to Fortnite to Call of Duty. They will spend time on that game, and that's that. And with having so much oversaturation of these live services, especially, looking at Concord, they tried making a game for nobody, and people want to play Overwatch. They don't want to play another game which is trying to imitate that. And that was the problem with that game. It's aiming for just an audience that isn't asking for another experience like that, especially with no, distinct changes or any distinct identity. Speaking to IGN, Willett said that the problem isn't necessarily that AAA games take too long to develop and thus launch into already abandoned genres. Rather, Willett believes
that sounds funny considering a lot of these games take a decade to make nowadays.
AAA developers are tending to overscope their games, which in turn means they fail to do any one thing brilliantly. And I do disagree a little bit with this, or I guess maybe I have a different perspective on it. But we've documented and talked so much about these live service disasters, from Redfall to Marvel's Avengers. Years before that, there was Anthem, there's Concord, Suicide Squad, Skull and Bones. There's just so many examples to choose from. And a lot of these games began development when the live service gravy train was just starting, when everybody was looking at the money that GTA Online and Fortnite was rolling in. They said, I want that. The executives at the top of studios like Warner Brothers said, yes, let's make that happen. These are the projects that we will greenlight. And what ends up happening is a lot of these studios, especially single player studios, they don't have the talent of the team ready for that, and they spend years trying to iterate, and a lot of the time they're not making these unique experiences that are going to redefine the industry. They're just making, clones.
We don't need unique experiences to redefine the industry. What did Baldur's Gate do special? Nothing. It's just the only thing Baldur's Gate did give you is good dialogue, actual real roleplay. It's nothing special, it's nothing new, it's not even unique in any way. It's just something that was made to an extremely, extremely high standard. And that's all we need. We don't need these magical new things. We're completely fine with old things that are just good, or made slightly better or more fun. And I'm completely fine with that. I don't need anything else.
Of other better games, and then once they release, they realize, there isn't an audience for that. So definitely I do think taking too long to develop and launching to already abandoned genres, it really depends what you mean by already abandoned genres, because the live service genre very much so feels like it's already oversaturated. Many of the individuals that are going to play Call of Duty and Fortnite, they're going to play that. They aren't necessarily looking for other experiences that are pretty much doing the exact same thing, as we've even seen with X Defiant this year. Now for Space Marine 2, Willits explained, Saber made sure to nail the core combat and kept a handle on the scope of the game, so much so that some have praised it for rekindling memories of the Xbox 360 era of action games, something that does feel like it's been missing as of late. And I think what's missing is really the AA games, which feel like they aren't here as much anymore. We're just getting these giant blockbuster $70 games, and some of them fail, some of them succeed. It is not necessarily the genre that has moved on,
Do most games fail nowadays, by the way? That's a good question. I'm not even sure. Do most AAA games now fail? I have a feeling like yes, but I can't be sure.
Because great games will always do well while it's insisted, although there's a couple examples such as Prince of Persia to Hi-Fi Rush that kind of dispute that perspective. But one of the things that we try to do at Saber, and this is part of my job as creative officer
Hi-Fi Rush did again do good, but it's an extremely niche thing.
of all the teams, we have a core belief that what you do every second and what happens when you push these buttons and that core gameplay loop is so critical. So we focus on the moment-to-moment interaction and the gameplay and the feeling you have. And then we adhere to our core pillars like the Ultimate Space Marine, melee, range, swarms, that's it. And a lot of teams throughout development will overscope games. They look at some other game that just came out and say, oh, we got to do that. Let's add this. We got to do this. And he's right on the money with this. And they lose focus on the core, what actually makes the game fun. And especially with how this industry
That's kind of hard to believe when you have a game coming out that barely has like one fucking progression system built into it, maybe maximum tops two progression systems. And yeah, that doesn't seem true in the slightest. Now, there are situations where, yeah, games are stealing how they play in a sense. Like, for example, Dragon Age Veilguard was initially obviously designed to be different, but then God of War came out and they were like, oh my god, spurging out, we need to be Kratos with his little fucking stepson. Okay, that did happen, but mostly, not a lot of things like that happen.
has developed and changed so much. There's so much interest, so many different games being made nowadays. I do think you need to differentiate enough with the formula that you're adapting. Now, we are not in Space Marine 2 doing that. Well, the swarms are new technology, but there isn't some revolutionary new gameplay mechanic that no one's ever seen before. There are gameplay mechanics that people are familiar with, but we do it really, really well, and we execute really, really well. And he does continue saying that he insisted that Space Marine 2 was affordably developed with a budget less than half that of Doom Eternal, the last game Willits worked on while boss of id Software before leaving to join Saber in 2019. We don't need to sell 4 million units to make Space Marine 2 a success. There are many games, sadly, especially out of North American developers, where if you do not sell 5 million copies, you are a failure. I mean, what business are we?
Yeah, that's true. Most AAA games. People wonder how do I always know of how much game costs, because all of them cost starting from 200 mil to 400 mil. The bigger the company, the bigger the ego, the more close to 400 million it's gonna be. Pretty simple. Because I mean that's just how it is nowadays. Same thing, by the way, with the movie industry. Everything now costs a bare minimum of 200 million to 400 million in like the MCU and that tier of production. It's just stupid. Well, in any case, yeah, that was pretty good. Insane. But that was Legendary Kill HD 10 out of 10. Bye.